January 23rd of 2024. This will be my first video of this new year of 2024. Before I get into what the crux of this production is going to be about, let me start off by running down my usual formation. For those who appreciate the content that is produced on this channel, then you can start off by getting my likes up. Give me the big thumbs up. Furthermore, share this production. And for those who would like to leave support for the production that are made on this channel, then you can feel free to do so via the links in the description box. Now, with that being stated, you're looking at my fair use disclaimer displayed on the screen. And the reason being for that, well, let me just get into that right now. All right. I guess what I can do before I actually play this is leave this right here. A couple of weeks ago, you had news reports coming from mainstream media outlets about electric vehicles getting hung up in Chicago, not due to being stuck in the cold or in the snow or whatever because of icy conditions, but due to battery failure and the cars being unable, either running out of battery, having a shortage of battery charge after replenishing the battery, or in certain cases, completely unable to accept a battery charge due to cold conditions. I would say for a couple of months now, I've been sitting back watching videos when it comes down to electric vehicles. Also, if you remember in the production that I made last year, I believe this was sometime back in September, that I stated that electric vehicles will never be the way of the future. Why? Because it's just simply unreliable. It's simply impractical. It makes absolutely no sense. These things, as far as I'm concerned, are DOA. And I've been sitting back and listening to videos, watching videos, and when I look at the videos, and some of them are favorable, the majority of them are not favorable. As a matter of fact, the ones that are not favorable significantly outweighs the ones that are actually favorable of EVs. For those of you who don't know what EVs are, that's the short term for electric vehicles. And when I look at these videos, I don't thumbs up the video, I don't thumbs down the video, I don't share the video, I don't leave a comment leaving feedback on the video. I just merely watch the video and move on to the next one. And the reason why I do it that way is because I don't want YouTube to gain a pattern, because we understand that YouTube has algorithms that look at your patterns and what you like or whatever the case may be, and they'll recommend it. So I don't lean in either direction when it comes down to these videos coming up in my timeline, whether they're favorable or non-favorable. And the reason why I do that is because I want an authentic recommendation coming to me. If there's more favorable videos about electric vehicles, then I want that to come to me authentically without me showcasing any favoritism toward either direction. If there's more videos that are showcasing to be non-favorable, which that is, and like I said before, these videos significantly outweigh the videos that are favorable of EVs, then I want that to come to me authentically. Now, with that being stated, out of all the videos that I've been watching in the past couple of months, this is the first time that I've actually thumbs down the video. And I'm talking about the video that I'm about to play and critique right here. And the reason being is this. I really don't care whether somebody favors an EV, whether it's their preferred choice in vehicle or not. That's beyond why I would actually thumbs down a video or thumbs up a video. Your preference is your preference. But if you're going to talk about something, talk about it for what it really is. And now there are some people that I've noticed who have videos that are in favor of electric vehicles. And some who have EVs and say that they prefer EVs, but will still tell you the truth about the vehicles, despite the fact that they still are in favor of EVs. But then you have what I'm looking at are the EV buffs. The people who will come out here and literally attempt to run interference, especially after all the videos have surfaced over the past couple of weeks. I mean, what was it? Back in, I would say, early to mid-December, you had a mass recall, I believe, on every Tesla. Then shortly after that, sometime during either the beginning of the new year or right before the new year started, when the polar vortex hit, you had countless electric vehicles that were stuck in Chicago, unable to accept the charge, had to be towed out of charging parking lots. And with all of these reports that have come out, I mean, at this point in time, you really can't hide this. Then what I've noticed is that the EV bus will come out here and attempt to run interference. And listen, let me just say this much. When I'm listening to somebody give a biased perspective, and there's a couple of things that you need to pay attention to when you're listening to people talk favorable about these electric vehicles. The fact of the matter is, these vehicles are not a practical solution. They are not any type of solution, nor will they ever be a solution to internal combustion engine vehicles. Now, I'm not here to sway anybody when it comes down to what direction you should go in, whether you should choose to get an electric vehicle or not, but I'm going to say this much. If you decide to get an electric vehicle, you probably want to make sure that that's not your only means of transportation. You still want to have an internal combustion engine vehicle, or in other words known as an ICE vehicle, which stands for internal combustion engine, whether it be gasoline or diesel. But when I sat down and I listened to this guy's video, and I'm talking about the individual that you're looking at right here on your screen, this was the first video that I actually thumbs down. Because when I listened to this, like I said, him having a preference for EVs or favoring EVs is not the reason why I thumbs down this video. But what I've noticed about individuals like this, and he's what I would call an EV buff, or maybe somebody who's perhaps getting paid when they're making these YouTube videos, which I don't know if he is. I can't say indefinitely that I think he is, because his video that I'm about to critique didn't have a whole lot of views in 2 days, but I don't know. I can't call it. But when I'm sitting back listening to him give his perspective, when you start to question information that somebody's telling you, is when they conveniently dodge or deflect from direct questions to go ahead and deviate into something else. And you're going to see examples of this in this video. He does this countless times. This is about a 6 to 8 minute video. I think I chopped it down maybe about a minute or so just to take the parts that I needed. When what you're going to notice is he's going to conveniently dodge certain questions and not give direct answers. He will conveniently omit certain pieces of information, in certain cases outright lie. And then something that he says toward the end of the video or at the end of the video completely contradicts one of the reasons as of why he favors the EV. But with that being stated, let's go right into it. Let me back it up as a matter of fact.
So, don't believe that guy in the intro, whoever he was. I mean, he was wearing a face mask probably to hide his face from you. But hey, it's the time of the year when you get to hear these things on social media and everywhere. They blow up stories about EVs, how bad they are. Well, I tell you what, this is our 6th winter here in Montana with our EVs. We had multiple right now. We have this 2018 Tesla Model 3 that we had since new. We have this 2013 Tesla Model S rear-wheel drive that we had since 2021. And in between, we had the 2020 Chevy Bolt, and we went through a winter with it. It did just fine as well. So their stories, you see, don't believe them. They're overblown. Okay. So one of the weird things is when I first got an electric car back in 2018, people would ask, how does it do in the winter? And I was always confused, why would they ask me that? It was in the middle of summer. But then eventually it clicked in my head and I figured it out.
Okay.
Well, because
let me just pause it for a second. And this right here should be the first red flag sign that lets you know that this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. People are asking him questions about the Tesla and how they work in the wintertime. And he couldn't understand why they would ask him such a question. And actually, I'm going to play a little bit more. But before I do that, you know, they teach you this in junior high school in science about batteries and how they lose their charge in colder temperatures. They do. I mean, this is stuff that I went through in high school or junior high school. So we're talking about, what, 30 years ago or more, I had an understanding of this. This guy, to sit here and in his advanced stage, to not have a basic understanding when people are asking him about electric vehicles and how do they perform in the summertime or in the wintertime, and he can't understand that, that should start to leave you to question the information that he's getting ready to give you. The next thing that I actually skipped over, which I need to address it right now, was the first thing he actually brought up. And he talked about the reports that are coming out. There's a lot of stuff coming out about electric vehicles, and he said they're overblown and don't believe them. And that's kind of strange that he would say this, because the first time I heard of these reports about the Tesla recalls, that was from what? Mainstream media news outlets. The first time I heard of the situation that took place in Chicago with all of the EVs literally getting stuck and having to be towed off the road because they would not accept the charge, that was through mainstream media news outlets. So essentially, I mean, here we have a scenario that's taking place, and instead of him attempting to explain what's happening and how you can avoid this from happening to you, if you were to go ahead and purchase one of these EVs, he wants to tell you that, hey, just simply don't believe all of the reports that have come out, all of the countless reports that have come out over the past several weeks, because your lying ears are not telling you what's really going on. But listen to what I'm about to say. It's pretty much what he's doing. So let me back it up a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and play it again, because there's something else I want you to hear.
people would ask, how does it do in the winter? And I was always confused, why would they ask me that? It was in the middle of summer.
Let me just pause that one more time. So people are asking him a direct question. How does your electric vehicle do in the winter? All right, that's a pretty direct question. You should be able to answer that with just in one sentence, but let's continue. And I'm saying this for a reason, and I want you to hold on to that, because there's a reason why I'm bringing this up.
It do in the winter. And I was always confused, why would they? So one of the weird things is when I first got an electric car back in 2018, people would ask, how does it do in the winter? And I was always confused, why would they ask me that? It was in the middle of summer. But then eventually it clicked in my head and I figured it out. Well, because internal combustion engine vehicle, they're gas cars, they're diesel trucks out here. They don't work in the winter. They have a hard time starting them when it's cold, minus 31 degrees.
Pause it for a second. Now notice how he was asked a direct question, right? And when people ask him a direct question about how does your electric vehicle perform in the winter, instead of him being able to explain this, whether it be in one sentence, or even if he wanted to go into depth on how his vehicles perform in the winter, notice how he immediately pivots to throwing internal combustion engine vehicles under the bus, even though the question was not asked about ICE vehicles. It was asked about electric vehicles. And this is a very indicative pattern that we see even when it comes down to the Biden administration. When people ask about the issues that has been created intentionally by the Biden administration ever since he's taken office, they immediately deflect onto Donald Trump. But wait a second. The problem is Trump is not in office. You're the president. and you're being asked a direct question, and instead of you giving a direct answer, you're deflecting and deviating onto somebody who's not even in the equation right now. Likewise, when it comes down to this guy being asked a direct question about electric vehicles, how do they perform in the winter? It's a very simple, straightforward question. And he could not give you a straightforward answer. You want to go ahead and deviate and talk about something that is not even the subject matter, which is internal combustion engine vehicles. So this right here is when you should question the information that somebody's giving you. He's not giving you a fair, balanced perspective. He already has a biased perspective because he has an agenda. He's pushing an agenda. Despite what he's saying is, in this case, is a flat out fucking lie. I've had ICE vehicles ever since 2013. So for more than a decade, I've been on the road with ICE vehicles. I live in New York City. Sometimes I go way upstate. And you're talking about some frigid temperatures up there, just like you can get frigid temperatures right here in the city. And I'm talking about single digits. I have never had an issue with any of the vehicles that I've ever had. But if you leave it up to this guy, he's going to tell you that internal combustion engine vehicles don't work in the winter. But despite the fact that he's not showcasing any evidence that substantiates this, he's telling you to disbelieve or don't believe the news reports of physical evidence, not just of news reports, but people actually having interviews with these reporters telling you about all the problems that they're having with their electric vehicles, how they won't charge, how they lose charge, how they won't accept the charge, how they literally have to have it towed. Don't believe that now, but believe the nonsense and the flat out lies that I'm telling you with nothing to substantiate what I'm saying to you. So this is another thing that you have to pay attention to. The next thing is I want to just briefly look at the numbers of the temperature that he's showcasing. Minus 35 degrees Celsius. I'm not exactly sure what that would equate to in Fahrenheit. I believe that's somewhere around the single digits in Fahrenheit. So you're talking about some pretty cold temperatures, no matter what temperature range you use to register it under. You're talking about some pretty cold temperatures. So let's continue. And you're going to see in this clip how he's going to make a false equivalence, how he's going to essentially compare apples to oranges in order to favor his narrative and his agenda and the electric vehicles that he loves so much. This is a guy that I would pretty much classify as an EV buff. But if you actually compare this on an equal level, you'll see where it pales in comparison. The comparison that he's actually making doesn't make any damn sense. But let me bring it back for a minute and we'll continue.
Combustion engine vehicle, they're getting, people would ask, how does it do in the winter? And I was always confused, why would they ask me that? It was in the middle of summer. But then eventually it clicked in my head and I figured it out. Well, because internal combustion engine vehicle, they're gas cars, they're diesel trucks out here. They don't work in the winter. They have a hard time starting them when it's cold. Minus 31 degrees. Even gas vehicles don't start if they've been sitting, like this one here, been sitting a couple days. We had it happen to us. Our Honda Accord wouldn't start. It was only minus 20. It was only sitting over the weekend. Monday morning, it would not start.
Right.
So.
And this is what I mean when I say a false equivalence. He immediately, instead of just explaining how the electric vehicles perform in the winter and things that you can do to keep your electric vehicle performing properly, he immediately goes into throwing ICE vehicles under the bus. Because of the cold temperatures, it won't start. And then you look at the comparison that he makes. He talks about his electric vehicle, which you can clearly see in the background. I don't know if I can zoom in. What you can clearly see is plugged up, right? So that would be a false equivalence. I mean, let's just try to make some similar comparisons, which still wouldn't even be fair and direct, but I'll bring it to a fair, direct comparison. When was the last time you've seen somebody have to keep their car plugged up to a gas pump in the winter time or during any time of the year because the weather was so bad that it would deplete the range of gas or deplete the gas just from it merely just sitting in not in use, off, not even idling? You've never heard of this. As a matter of fact, if you've seen somebody doing this, you look at them and say, what the hell is wrong with you? Why don't you disconnect the gas pump from your gas tank? Why? Because the gasoline, the range of gasoline, or the gasoline itself doesn't deplete based off of temperature. It depletes based off of usage. But still, that's not a fair comparison, because what? We're talking about being able to start the car up, right? And what starts the car? The battery. Okay, so let's make a more fair comparison. He's conveniently showcasing his electric Tesla off, being plugged up while it's off, unless he probably will, from what he's going to confirm, is that he keeps it plugged up all the time when he doesn't use it. When in the history have you used an ICE vehicle that you've had to keep somehow charging the battery all the damn time in order for it to damn start? It doesn't make any damn sense. You know, if your battery is that bad, it's just simply time to replace the goddamn battery and call it a day, and then you don't have this problem anymore. But if we're going to make a fair comparison, then, you know, you typically don't see, well, hell, where I live in Chicago, where most people live in the inner cities, where you live in apartment buildings, you don't have no place to plug up these cars and charge them or to keep the battery charged. These cars it's off-street parking. When was the last time you went to one of these vehicles and seen them just sitting here with some kind of extension cord hooked up to them in order to keep the battery charged? You don't have this problem. And even if you do have an issue with the battery not starting or if it running dead based off of the cold temperatures, the longer you keep it off, you can buy a battery charger, a portable battery charger, right at an AutoZone or Pep Boys or any of these places where you can buy parts for vehicles. And you can plug this thing up with a USB charger. Keep it right inside of your car. And if something happens and you need to jumpstart that car, you just hook it up, turn the power on, and start the engine. And then the engine, from right then and there, you pretty much can disconnect your portable charger. So you only need it for either a few seconds or a few minutes, and you're done. You just let the engine run and charge the battery back up, and your problem is solved. But he's comparing keeping his electric vehicle plugged up 24/7 while not in use, compared to ICE vehicles, which the majority, and especially if you're talking about newer vehicles, they don't have this problem like that. They start up with no problem. I have not had one problem with any vehicle that I've ever had starting in the dead cold of winter. And if it becomes that big of an issue, and if you're that afraid, then you can remote start the car once or twice a day. I believe with my cars, they will remote start for 15 minutes. And I'm assuming that the manufacturers made it that way because 15 minutes is all you need to give enough juice to the battery to keep it sustainable. But let's continue.
What do? Well, you have to plug in your ICE vehicle. Yes, isn't that a couple days? We had it happen to us. Our Honda Accord wouldn't start. It was only -20.
Oh. Now, let me just say this much also before I let this go. He mentioned that the Tesla that he has that's inside of that shed or that little hut or whatever it is that he has there, that overhead compartment. He mentioned that Tesla is a 2021 Tesla. You notice how he conveniently didn't mention the make of the car, a Honda Accord, the make and model of the car, but he didn't mention what year the car was. The next thing I would like to know is how old was the battery? When was the last time you actually replace that battery? Okay. Also, this goes back into this false equivalence. He talked about his Honda Accord, which had no charge, no nothing to it, that was sitting in the cold for 2 days, for a weekend, and when he went to go start it on Monday, it wouldn't start. All right. Now, you were talking about a vehicle. Well, number one, we only know the model and make of the vehicle. We don't know what year it was. We don't know when was the last time you changed the battery, or if the battery was relatively new, or what kind of condition that battery was in. So notice how they will conveniently omit crucial pieces of information that can thoroughly give you an understanding on what's being said here or why these circumstances actually took place. The next thing is the comparison. You're comparing your vehicle, your 2021 Tesla that you keep plugged up and charged, and let's just say he didn't drive that car all weekend. We most certainly know, and he'll admit to this later on in the video, that he keeps the vehicle plugged up. So of course, when you have your Tesla plugged up and have a constant charge going into the battery, yes, it would make sense that you can start that vehicle versus your Honda Accord that's been sitting with no attention. Of course, we know you didn't start the damn thing in order to just give it a little oomph to make sure the battery doesn't drain. But he'll sit here and tell you how the Tesla did so much better and I can just start the car. Let's continue. Once again, that's a false comparison, because a fair comparison would be, okay, let the Honda Accord sit for 2 days or whatever it is. As a matter of fact, put both cars side by side with each other. Don't plug up the Tesla. Don't start your Honda Accord. Let it sit for 48 hours straight on the coldest days. Then try to start them both up and see which one will start and won't start. See, that will be a matter of making a fair comparison. But he's not going to do that. Why? Because he's pushing a one-sided bias agenda. Let's continue.
Was only sitting over the weekend. Monday morning it would not start. So what do? Well, you have to plug in your ICE vehicle. Yes, isn't that kind of weird? You plug in your internal combustion engine vehicle that runs off gas or diesel so that you can start it. Yeah, you have to plug it in so that there's a block heater that keeps the engine warm.
Pause that again. And this is very inconsistent, and I want you to notice the inconsistency here. He finds it weird that you have to plug up your ICE vehicle. And you would only have to do that for a very short period of time, maybe a few minutes, maybe a few seconds. Once you plug it up, or if we're talking about heating or keeping the engine block warm, that's probably going to be more or less for a diesel engine car. Gasoline cars, not really. You ain't really going to have to do that. I've never even seen anybody doing that with gasoline cars. And I've heard of it being done in places like Russia in those really, really cold temperatures. But you're probably not going to have to worry about doing that in the United States. Too tough. But notice how he finds it so strange that somebody can plug up a gasoline or diesel car, because he didn't specify, can plug it up to attempt to keep it warm so they can be able to start it whenever they need to. That's strange to him, because why would somebody need to plug up this car? He finds it unusual that a car would have to be plugged up, but yet he has no problem plugging up his electric vehicle every single day. As soon as he comes home, he plugs it back in to charge it, because he doesn't know whether he's going to be able to have enough charge the next time he's ready to use it. So just notice how this is inconsistent. It doesn't show that the pattern. If you are accustomed to plugging up your battery-powered vehicle, then it shouldn't be that big of a deal for you to have to plug up a gasoline vehicle in order to keep a heater going, or whatever to keep it, or diesel, or whatever it is, in order to keep a heater going to keep it warm. That shouldn't be such a surprise to you, but he makes it seem as if this is such a surprise, despite the fact that he does it on a daily basis whenever he takes out his battery-powered vehicle. Anyhow, let's continue.
That's what you have to do in cold temperatures like this, unless you have a nice garage that stays warm or is even heated. Then, yeah, you may be lucky. Also, if I would go to town today, all the vehicles in the parking lots everywhere are probably running at least 90%. Nice. Why? Well, because people are afraid they don't restart. Nice. And people don't want it cold. They go in real quick. Oh, it's only 5-10 minutes, so they leave it running out there. Nice. Polluting and idling at 0 miles per gallon, the worst fuel economy you could have.
Let's pause that and let's just go back into some of the images. What did he just say? And he just flat out lied, all right? He said the majority of people, if he goes into town and he would go by the parking lots, he would see the majority of vehicles idling, because they're afraid if they leave the car for 5 or 10 minutes that they won't be able to start the car, which is a bold-faced lie. Where I live at in New York, there's off-street parking. These cars will sit there overnight. These cars, in certain cases, will sit there a couple of days. I've left my car parked for a couple of days in cold conditions, and I've had no problem starting my car. And if I can do this for a couple of days, and if people can do this for a couple of days, as a matter of fact, somebody had parked a car and they left not the headlight, but I think the car is Mercedes-Benz, so it has the LED trimming, the lighting for it. They left this thing on. Now, I first seen it, I thought they were just sitting in the car and was just chilling in the car. But hours later, the lights were still on. And when I came back out later on that night, the lights were still on. When I came out the next day, it was still on. The day after, the lights were still on. So for about 48 hours, this car was sitting here with lights on, with the LED trim on. The engine wasn't running. It was just running off of the battery. Usually if there's a problem and the battery ends up dead, you would hear people trying to jump start the car, whatever the case may be. The car's been moved. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. There was nobody out there trying to jump start it. So despite the fact that the battery has had running lights on for that long, more than 2 days later, the owner of that vehicle was able to get in that car and start the car without a problem and leave. Because when I came out the next day, I didn't see the car. Well, when I came out, I guess 2 days after he initially left it there. So what he's saying doesn't even make any sense. What parking lot would you go to and see 90% of vehicles idling? Let's just say people are going to a shopping center. They got to go to a supermarket or whatever the case may be, do their daily errands, a laundromat, whatever, a restaurant. When was the last time you went into those parking lots and seen 90% of the vehicles idling? As a matter of fact, in New York, there's laws against idling in certain places, so you can't just leave the vehicle idling. So when he says 90% of the vehicles are idling, that's a bold-faced lie. It makes no sense. The next thing is, if he's going to say something like this, then clearly he took the time to go ahead and show some images. But notice how not one of these images substantiated his talking points. Like, for instance, look at the image here. There's a pixelated, this is bad quality image. But we're looking at some ice on the ground, but it looks like the roads have been plowed, at least to a degree. A vehicle that's in operation over here. Potentially another one that's over here. And what you have here, it looks like a gentleman is actually removing the snow off of this vehicle here. And then you see vehicles in the parking spaces. But not one garage. Or not a garage, but not one parking lot that showcases what he's looking for. You do have an image of a guy walking his dog over here, but no vehicles sitting idling in a parking lot. What do we have? Vehicles that are on the road in bumper-to-bumper traffic, probably throughout rush hour. Where does this say parking lot on it? It makes sense that, yes, the vehicles are going to be running because people are actually sitting in the vehicle. They got the brake lights on, the tail lights are on. So this clearly lets you know that people are in the vehicles. So the question is, what is he talking about? Where are your examples? Notice how he still didn't answer the question when it came down to how does your vehicle hold up in the winter? But he went as far as to put out these piss poor examples so he can throw ICE vehicles under the bus. The next picture, or what was the first picture? Once again, taillights on a city street, vehicles in bumper-to-bumper traffic in rush hour, or maybe just stopped at a red light. But what he did not demonstrate is an actual parking lot that has 90% of vehicles idling. This is a bold-faced lie. So when you sit back and listen to someone giving information like this, you got to question, can I really trust what you're saying? Because what you're saying is not actually accurate information. It's biased information that's geared to spin the narrative or to fit in the direction of the narrative that you're looking to spin. Let's continue.
%. Why? Well, because people are afraid they don't restart. And people don't want it cold. They go in real quick. Oh, it's only 5-10 minutes. So they leave it running out there, polluting and idling at 0 miles per gallon. The worst.
Notice how this is supposed to be a topic about the electric vehicle and how it performs in the winter. He still hasn't gotten around to that. But he is talking about how idling vehicles pollute so damn much. But if he wants to talk about pollution, he doesn't want to talk about the mining of these lithium-ion batteries and the pollution that it puts out into the atmosphere. And furthermore, the slave labor that is used, the child labor that is used in Africa, using small children to go ahead and mine these batteries. He doesn't want to talk about that now, does he? But he wants to tell you by having your ICE vehicle idling, it's putting forth so much pollution. Let's continue.
Fuel economy you could have. Not with an electric car. With an electric car, you keep just because people are afraid they don't restart. And people don't want it cold. They go in real quick. Oh, it's only 5-10 minutes. So they leave it running out there, polluting and idling at 0 miles per gallon, the worst fuel economy you could have. Not with an electric car. With an electric car, you keep just the heat going. That's all you keep going. Nobody will even notice that it is on. You can keep your cabin nice and warm. So,
is that the reason why people are saying they're losing so much battery range in the winter? Because if you put the heat on, it pulls from the battery, furthermore depleting its range? Just for an example, just since he won't answer the question, I think the range of loss that you lose in extremely cold temperatures with an electric vehicle is somewhere around 30 to 40%. I know definitely around 30%. And the colder it is, it probably goes even higher. But notice he has not mentioned that, because he doesn't want to tell you the facts when it comes down to these electric vehicles, because that's not what he's here to do. He doesn't want to tell you the truth, which if he was being honest, he would actually be able to tell you this. And like I stated, I've listened to videos to where people own electric vehicles who have favored electric vehicles. But the difference is between their videos and this buff's videos is they'll actually tell you the goddamn truth, which is something that this guy's not doing. So when you want to sit up here and talk about, and just notice how he talks so favorably about the electric vehicle. Oh, you just turn the heat on and that's all it does is keep the heat going and it stays nice and toasty. This is what he's telling you, despite the fact that there are countless reports. And not only that, all the data that's out here from the situation that took place in Chicago during the polar vortex and probably all over the country. But you also, if EVs were so good, why is it that you have Hertz, the car rental company, that is now ditching EVs and going back to purchasing gasoline-powered vehicles? Why is it that you have so many car manufacturing companies? I think is it Ford? I believe is deciding to stop production on electric vehicles and strictly focusing on gasoline-powered vehicles. Why is it that these vehicles are not being sold like that and car dealerships or manufacturing companies are taking losses? See, this guy can't tell you not one practical reason as to why you should go out and purchase one of these vehicles, which would have you questioning the information that he is giving you. Like I said, he's pushing a biased agenda. Chances are he might be getting some money off of this, but based off of the lack of views that I've seen in the 2 days that video was up, there wasn't a whole lot of views. So, it could be a far stretch for me to say something like that, but you still got to question, what is somebody's motive to go out here and literally attempt to throw ICE vehicles under the bus while elevating and praising electric vehicles, despite the fact that there is no practicality when it comes down to these vehicles. Their reliability outright sucks. This is why Hertz has decided to ditch them. You have all of these news outlets that are stating these facts, but yet don't pay attention to that because it's not true. These are all lies. But he can't substantiate not one thing of what he has stated thus far, even when it came down to these piss poor pictures that he has produced showcasing cars on the road but not sitting in parking lots idling, as he was saying 90% of them are doing. Not one picture to substantiate that. But let's keep going.
we wanted to go somewhere today, I would use one of those two vehicles. I won't know to use the truck over there. No, the truck may not even start. So, and well, what would I do? Well, go check out this video and
once again, if the truck has been sitting there 3 or 4 days straight in the freezing cold and you haven't started it one time, then yeah, there's a greater chance that it won't start, especially when it comes down to diesel, because diesel, the fuel will gel up in the cold. So yes, it is best to start it at some point. Don't leave it sitting there unused with the engine completely turned off. Don't do that. But of course, I mean, if you leave your EV and you don't plug that thing up, guess what? It won't start either. But anyhow, let's keep going.
then you know what would I do? Well, go check out this video and then you know what you need to do when it's that cold out, that you can get in a nice and comfy electric vehicle and it will be driving just wonderful, okay? Even in an emergency vehicle. And go check out this video and then you know what would I do? Well, go check out this video and then you know what you need to do when it's that cold out, that you can get in a nice and comfy electric vehicle and it will be driving just wonderful, okay?
All right. This is what I call running interference, and the statement that he made is very similar to another YouTube video that I started looking at, or that I looked at, where you had these people coming out shortly after the reports came out about how all these electric vehicles were stuck, had to be towed away. And I'm talking about at Tesla charging stations. Uber drivers who were using Teslas to do rideshare, the charge wouldn't last. They would have to charge it twice a day, and the charge didn't hold, and it took longer to charge. All of these things that were going on, you're losing money when you're going through this with an electric vehicle, especially if you're doing rideshare. Why would anybody use an electric vehicle to do rideshare? That is beyond my wildest imagination. But anyhow, let me not even get into that in this particular video. What I noticed about the EV buffs, and this guy right here is actually one of them, an EV buff, is they come out here and they attempt to run interference. And what they try to do is they attempt to oversell. And it's the same thing that kind of reminds me of when the Biden administration got into the White House. How CNN, all these liberal mainstream media news outlet was just going too far, trying to oversell this guy. And it comes across as disingenuous when you go this far out your way. And he's sitting here talking about, and I'm talking about this guy right here. He's sitting there talking about, oh, what you can do, you can get yourself in a nice, comfy electric vehicle and it'll be driving just fine down the road. They're overselling this, despite the fact that these vehicles are the most unreliable vehicles that you can purchase. The video that I seen a couple of days ago, these people were talking about, well, when I plug up my Tesla and precondition it and use the heat pump system, I get in it, it's nice and toasty, and it's even better than an ICE vehicle. This is what you call a biased perspective, okay? Let me make this perfectly clear. And this is how you know when somebody's being genuine with you. I'm no fan of EVs. I will never go out and purchase one. I don't want them. I don't like them. I think anybody who decides to go out and get one, you need to use discretion and don't make this your only source of income. If you just want to use it as a play vehicle to go out a night out of town on the weekends or whatever the case, then fine. But when it comes down to your primary source of transportation, I would not recommend it. However, despite my personal opinion, when it comes down to any type of EV, a heating system inside of a car, that has nothing to do with whether the vehicle is electric or whether it's an internal combustion engine vehicle. The only thing that really matters when it comes down to a heating system inside of the car, between it being electric and gas powered, is electric, it's going to drain your battery. Just like if you run the air conditioning in your car, it's going to drain your battery. That's just a fact. With an ICE vehicle, the heat is just a side effect of the combustion. So you have extra heat that you can use. Now it's cold outside, you need heat. It actually warms up the cab of the car, and it does it very well. Now, when these heating systems are running, the only advantage that you would have with an electric vehicle, now it's pending on how the heating system is made. Well, from what I understand, the older Tesla vehicles or the older electric vehicles use resistant heating. So with that, you'll get heat immediately. But if it's really cold outside and cold in the car, it's still going to take time for that thing to warm the car up. That's just the way it's going to go down. And using heat through resistance is pretty much like using a space heater. If you ever look at the space heater with the little red coils that heat up as soon as you turn it on, the thing turns red. That's what resistant heating is. It just uses a resistor, and that's how the thing turns red, and that's how it produces its heat. With an internal combustion engine vehicle, the only disadvantage behind that is the fact that you have to let the engine warm up. But the thing is, with internal combustion engine vehicles, especially with newer cars, the engines warm up so fast, in 15 minutes you start feeling heat. Usually in my car, I start feeling it way before 15 minutes. I can start feeling it 5 to 7 minutes, 10 minutes, the vents are starting to produce heat. Because the engine takes a short period of time, even during the coldest days, to heat up. And the thing is with ICE vehicles, the colder it is, when you first start the car, if the engine is cold, it runs in higher RPMs on idle just to bring up that temperature. So, like I said, the disadvantage would be behind the ICE vehicle is that, well, it might take a little longer before you start feeling the heat. The way Tesla has their heating system set up, I don't know when it comes down to this electrical heat, the resistant heat, if it's set up good, if the heating elements have a high output, then you can start feeling that heat right away. From what I do understand about the newer model EVs, hold on one second. So as I was saying, what I do understand about the newer model electric vehicles is they have a heat pump system. Okay, the heat pump system is just, and I talked about this in a video I did last year. It's just an air conditioning system that works in reverse. Now, some might say, okay, you can get instantaneous heat out of that. Well, in ideal conditions, yes. Here's the problem. The colder it is outside, the harder that heat pump has of a time of running or building up heat. Because the cold, just like when it comes down to a battery, it takes away its charge to being able to produce the heat on the inside. So when we're sitting up here and we're looking at these people telling you how effective and how much better the heating system is, no, the only advantage that you might have, and like I say, I can't speak on it indefinitely because I don't have one of these cars. I've never driven one. I've never sat in one. I don't care to. The only advantage that I consider that it might possibly have, if it has resisting heat, maybe in a combination with the heat pump, is you can start feeling the heating effects a lot faster or a lot sooner with a electric vehicle than you could with an ICE vehicle. But even with the ICE vehicle, once the engine gets heated up and the coolant is running nice and hot, you get a temperature of about 130, 140, 150, the heat is the same, whether it be in an ICE vehicle or an electric vehicle. As a matter of fact, it might be better in an ICE vehicle. Why? Because once that engine is hot, the coolant in there is just, you're blowing out hot air. So, but if I'm going to put it on an equal level, I would say that at a bare minimum, the heating systems would be the same. So why would somebody sit up here and try to present to you as if these electric vehicles, oh, it's so much better? That's the way they try to present it. Not that, oh, the heat is nice, it warms up faster. No, they say it's better. It performs so well. You could get a nice, comfy electric vehicle and everything is going to be smooth. The overselling right here is what should have you really questioning this guy's motives. But let's continue. Bring it back a little bit.
I do? Well, go check out this video and then you know what would I do? Well, go check out this video and then you know what you need to do when it's that cold out, that you can get in a nice and comfy electric vehicle and it will be driving just wonderful, okay? Even in an emergency right now, if we needed one of these two here, we could get in and go. We probably would take this one because there's not as much snow on it.
Again, it's just the reason why he would be able to get it and go is because he has this thing plugged up all the time. All the time. Okay? An ICE vehicle is not plugged up into anything. You go and look at off-street parking and these ICE vehicles are sitting in these parking spaces. They're not plugged up into anything. Okay? Now you got to ask the question, how much juice are you pulling in order to keep this thing charged up and to keep the battery preconditioned? What y'all to think about that? Just think of the level of insanity. But let's keep going.
We would have to dig out this one, takes a little longer. So we would take it here. We would get in and go. Yes, it would be freezing cold in there. But it starts up. It goes. No problem. What about range, you ask? No big deal. Yes, you have less range in the wintertime. Why? Because you heat with the electricity that's in the battery pack. Internal combustion engine vehicles are...
Did you hear how he kind of contradicted himself there? First of all, he never tells you how much range you lose in the wintertime. He never actually answered that question, which was the initial question that people were asking him. Once again, notice how he does not answer that question. Then notice how he immediately went to throwing internal combustion engine vehicles under the bus and saying, well, these people keep them idling. 90% of these cars that are in parking lots are idling because people are afraid if they leave the car for 5 or 10 minutes in such a short time span. I mean, I don't know nobody who's worried about their car not starting after turning it off for 5 minutes. That doesn't make any sense. But once again, notice how he is exaggerating. And that's what he's doing. He's over-exaggerating the effects. Now, it's not to say that ICE vehicles are not impacted by the cold. All right? But you have to leave these vehicles off for a significant period of time before you start having to worry about the battery being drained due to the cold temperatures. So what he's doing when he says 5 or 10 minutes, he's exaggerating it deliberately, despite the fact that anybody who has a driver's license, who's considering getting an electric vehicle, at some point has had an ICE vehicle to know that what he is saying is complete bullshit. And he's saying the reason that people want to keep these cars idling is to keep them warm, and so the battery doesn't die. But he just sat back and said, well, with an electric vehicle, you can just keep just the heat going, just the heat, and you'll be fine. But now he's turning around telling you, yeah, you lose range when you use heat in the electric powered vehicle. But notice how once again he omits information, doesn't tell you the range, even though I'm pretty damn well certain that he knows the range of how much you lose, but he doesn't mention that. Let's keep going.
So inefficient, they have so much excess heat, you can easily... Yes, you have less...
Also, before I go any further, once again, he's going to go out of his way again to throw ICE vehicles under the bus. So every time it's a question related to EVs, he immediately pivots. Even if he briefly answers it very vaguely, he will immediately pivot and deviate and start finding a way to throw ICE vehicles under the bus. Let me go.
A little longer. So we would take it here. We will get in and go. Yes, it will be freezing cold in there, but it starts up. It goes, no problem. What about range, you ask? No big deal. Yes, you have less range in the wintertime. Why? Because you heat with the electricity that's in the battery pack. Internal combustion engine vehicles are so inefficient, they have so much excess heat, you can easily heat the cabin. That is an advantage. But
okay. So it immediately goes as far as talking about internal combustion engines are so inefficient that you got so much excess heat that you can easily heat the cabin. This is something else that should tell you this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And I want y'all to be careful whenever it comes down to buying appliances. Don't mix efficiency with productivity. Don't mix efficiency with your overall dollar, is what I'm saying. Because these two things get conflated, and if somebody who knows nothing about it, somebody can sit here and tell you and sell you something, oh, it's 90% efficient, 80% efficient, 95% efficient. And they'll sell you on that, but yet this thing can't get the job done. It can't reach satisfaction for the application in which it is working in. But they'll tell you about how efficient it is. And that has absolutely nothing to do with performance. When it comes down to efficiency, what he's trying to say is that internal combustion engines are so inefficient that they waste so much heat. But these aren't the vehicles, once again, that are on the roads having these problems. These aren't the vehicles that are making headline news about getting stuck because they won't start. Batteries won't start. Even if your car runs out of fuel, even if your battery runs dead. When was the last time you ever went to a damn gas station or went and filled up a gas tank and brought it back to your car and put gas in the car and the damn thing wouldn't accept the gas? I mean, this is essentially where we're at when it comes down to EVs. These cars aren't even accepting the charge. When you think about it, there is absolutely no practicality when it comes down to these vehicles. I mean, it's one thing to say to precondition a battery before you drive it. That would make sense. It's kind of like preheating your car before you drive it. Start the car, let it remote start, let it run for a little bit, let the engine idle, get the heat going, heat up all the components. Okay, you're good to go. 5, maybe 10 minutes later, however cold it is outside, whatever you need to do. Makes sense. But the thing is, once you get in that car and you drive that vehicle, you don't have to sit around preconditioning anything. Why? Because the engine is already... everything is already lubricated, everything is already heated, everything is doing what it needs to do to sustain itself. Unlike the electric vehicle. And this is one of the problems that was happening in Chicago. People had already preconditioned their cars before they went on the road. They went on the road, drove their cars, and when they realized they were losing range in the battery, they went to go plug up the charger. Guess what? The battery would not even accept it. Why? Because it wasn't preconditioned. Wait a second, what are we talking about here? Preconditioning means you just keep the battery warm. So you mean to tell me while this vehicle is in use, while it's driving, while it's moving, that's not enough to keep that battery warm to the point where you now have to draw even more power from this battery to precondition it, to heating this battery. Despite the fact that you got heat going on in the car, despite the fact that the car is supplying, or the battery is supplying power to the traction motor or the drivetrain, whatever it is, this is not enough to keep the battery warm enough to where if you need to plug it up and get an immediate charge where you can actually do so. There is absolutely no practicality behind this. But once again, he's trying to make it seem as if advantage only for heating, very bad for fuel consumption, which is completely inaccurate. Let me make something perfectly clear. This is one of the things that I respect about an engine. I've stated this in the past and I'll state this again. The boiler and the engine, in my opinion, are two of man's best inventions. I appreciate when I open up the hood of my car while the engine is running and I can feel that heat come rising right up at me. I appreciate that. Because you know what that lets me know in the wintertime, especially when it's real cold? Is that I got a hot engine. Is that the cab of my car is nice and toasty. That's what it tells me. What it also lets me know with the excessive heat that's in there is that, listen, I don't got to worry about components freezing inside of this engine compartment. Everything is going to be warm. That way my transmission oil, my brake fluid, or whatever, all of that stuff reaps the benefits of that excessive heat or that excess heat. But let me go ahead and say this right now. Waste heat or heat is just a side effect of combustion. It's a side effect of combustion. I'm going to say it one more time. Heat is just a side effect of combustion. Your battery, on the other hand, doesn't do that. Heat is a load on a battery. That's a fact. Whenever you're using electricity, heat is a load on electricity, or in this case, a battery. It's not a side effect. It's not something that says, okay, I got extra of you. I could just use you to heat up the cab or the car, and I could just use you to keep the battery warm. That's not how that works. And I've listened to some videos of them talking about these electric vehicles where they're so desperate to try to extract whatever heat they can to try to keep that battery warm in the cold, that they're literally trying to pull heat from inside devices like your screen, your computer screens, or whatever, your dashboard, shit like this. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There is absolutely nothing that is practical when it comes down to a vehicle like this. If the battery can't keep itself warm while it's in operation without that being an additional load onto that vehicle or onto that battery, then in my opinion, the car is not worth having. It's not worth having. So keeping heat on, that's not an additional load to an ICE vehicle. Why? Because that's just a side effect of combustion. And that side effect have many different advantages that you can use. As a matter of fact, if they wanted to go with a heat pump for an ICE vehicle, it would work better in an ICE vehicle. Why? For those of you who don't know, the air conditioner is ran off of the rotation of the crankshaft of your engine. So through the rotation of the crankshaft of your engine, you not only get heat, a heating effect, but you also get momentum, which can propel your car at very fast speeds in short periods of time. You run your alternator, which supplies you with electricity inside of your car. And you can also run your air conditioner, which also is drawn on that same drive belt. You don't get that efficiency with an EV. So when they want to talk about efficiency, no, these things are not efficiencies when it comes down to an EV. As a matter of fact, this is a load on the battery. Now, in this case, an air conditioner, well, I believe for older cars, I don't know about newer cars, but older cars, air conditioners will actually draw a little bit more fuel because of the rotation that the belt would have to use in order to spin that compressor. Probably not so big of a deal now because I don't notice any difference in the summer compared to the winter. But this is literally what he's trying to tell you. And now we're going to talk about heat being a waste. In some of the previous cars that I had, what I noticed is with the engine air intake, it was just a box that was sitting right beside the engine, and it faced toward the bottom, or it pulled its air from the bottom. Not really drawing its air from a direct heat source, even though there is a residual heat that comes from the engine, so that doesn't become a big deal. Now what I've noticed with newer cars, and I pretty much with every newer car that I walk past and see at a dealership or whatever, I'll take a look under the grill. And right at the grill, what you're going to notice is that there's louver vents or shutters. My car has them now. And what this does is in the wintertime, when the car's not running, the louvers close. When you start the car, the louvers will remain closed. Once the engine gets the temperature and the radiator fan kicks in to cool down the engine, the louver vanes will open up maybe slightly depending on the temperature, or it might open up all the way depending if it's not too cold outside. As soon as that radiator fan cuts off, the vanes close. Why is it doing that? For someone who's saying that this is so inefficient, why is it doing that? They're using those louver vanes to retain the heat inside of the engine compartment. The only time you see them remain open 24/7 is on a hot summer day, or just in the summertime when the temperature is not at a certain temperature, then they stay open. In addition to that, looking under the engine compartment or under the hood with many newer vehicles, what you're going to also find is that the engine air intake is not set up the way it used to be on older cars. The way they set up to where it extracts air from, it extracts air directly above the car radiator. And right at the car radiator compartment is where you have your condenser or your evaporator, one of the two. That's part of the air conditioning system. You have the radiator or the heat exchanger for your transmission oil and all these other different components. You have these heat exchangers that are always producing heat. So when I'm looking at this, I said, okay, this is pretty much ingenious. So they have a way to extract warmer air from the engine. So they're using heat from the engine to actually extract it and dump it inside of the combustion chamber. So they have conditioned air, because if you know anything about air densities, you want to keep it at a certain temperature so you can have it at the perfect density for proper combustion, which does what? Leads to cleaner combustion, and number two, a more efficient combustion. And that right there should let you know that this guy that you're looking at on the screen, this EV buff, doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's just sitting here rambling on, flapping his goddamn gums, saying a bunch of nonsense. He can't give you not one legitimate reason as to why you should go ahead and purchase one of these damn lemons that are pretty much worthless in the goddamn winter. But he said, oh, they're so nice and cozy and toasty, and it's better than an ICE vehicle. Because once again, he's pushing an agenda. But he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And later on in this video, you're going to find or see where he actually contradicts himself. Because he's talking about all of this pollution and lack of efficiency through internal combustion. So we have to keep that in mind now, that this is what he's running his platform off of, or this particular video. Let's continue.
With the electric vehicle, unfortunately, yes, we need to use electricity from the battery. But it's actually not so bad.
Not so bad, huh?
We still make it on our trips in the wintertime. We still make it from here to our supercharger in Butte. If we go that direction, 150 miles, uphill battle, 2,000 feet elevation gain, no problem. And that's all that matters. And there we want to brake anyway after a couple hours of driving. Around town, no big deal. Also, most of the time for your daily driving, you don't need that much. And you can just increase your charge level a little bit. So if you have it charged to 70%, now charge it to 80%. And you got...
All right, let me just pause it. Did you hear what he said when it came down to charge levels? If you got it charged at 70%, why don't you just increase it to 80% and you got a little bit more juice? Just listen to all of the inconveniences that are involved with one of these disastrous vehicles. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is disastrous. Now, I've seen some people say, well, EVs outperform ICE vehicles, and no, that is false. That is a bold-faced lie, because if the vehicle cannot perform outside of ideal conditions, which an ICE vehicle under normal operating conditions, I'm talking about those that are in good running condition, have no problem performing in all temperatures and climates. It's only with these EVs you start having these problems. And if it cannot perform in all types of climates, then it's not a good vehicle. It cannot outperform anything because an ICE vehicle has no problem doing this. But listen to the inconveniences that are involved with this. Like I mentioned, one of the problems that they had out there in Chicago, or just during cold temperatures, during the polar vortex, is that they could not get their cars to accept a charge. And we're talking about vehicles that were in operation, not vehicles that were just sitting, that weren't in use. So now that you've been using it, you figure your battery should be warm enough to where you could just plug it up and get it to accept the charge. Tesla's telling you, well, precondition the car as you're driving it, which will do what? Now you're running your heating system to keep warm, the cabin of the car warm. Now you're running an element to keep the battery pack warm. That's at the base of the car, which covers the whole base of the car. What type of heat source would you need, or how many amps or volts would you need to supply that battery with enough heat to keep it preconditioned? Which is going to do what in return? Draw on your battery. But see, they don't want to talk about this. Not only that, it's also a hazard, and this is what the EV buffs are going to tell you, which this is actually true. That if you charge your battery up to 100%, you wear out the charge of that battery, or you're going to wear out that battery a lot faster. You'll deteriorate that battery a lot faster. So it is best to recommend to keep it charged to maybe 70 or 80%. But now think about the level of inconvenience that you have for that. When in the history since driving an ICE vehicle has anybody ever had this problem? When have you ever had to precondition your car in order for it to accept gas? Even if your battery dies out into the freezing cold because you didn't start the car for a couple of days. If you go to hook up a jumper cable to the car, or a portable jumper cable to the car, when did you ever have to precondition that battery before you can get it to accept the charge? And let's just say if these circumstances were true with an ICE vehicle, well, the thing is, all you really need to do is just get enough voltage inside of that battery to where you can crank that engine. And if it's a matter of preconditioning, guess what? You let the engine run because the engine will warm the battery. That's the side effect and the benefit behind having the side effect of heat due to internal combustion. So once again, when you listen to a guy like this, a buff like this, get on here and just say things that are completely outright insane. Really just stupid, to be honest. It's half the shit he's saying is fucking stupid. Doesn't make any damn sense what he's saying. But he's trying to get you to look at all of this, all of the convenience that you actually have with an ICE vehicle, to now go ahead and favor the inconveniences of an electric vehicle. And I don't know who's blowing their horn. Hold on one second. So as I was saying before, you have this guy trying to tell you that all of the benefits that you have with an internal combustion engine, that's just inefficiency, and it pollutes and it causes all of these problems. But he's trying to sell you on all of the inconveniences on electric vehicles, which none of it makes any sense. None of it. When in the history have you had to precondition, like I said a second ago, precondition your car in order for it to accept gas in the gas tank? You don't have to do that. You never had to do that. As a matter of fact, even if you go into a crowded gas station, people are going to be at the pump for a few minutes and then they're gone. So at some point you can get to that gas pump and pump your car, even if you have damn near nothing in the tank. With your EV, guess what? You're kind of fucked if your battery is damn near empty and you go into a charging station and you find a bunch of cars already in there taking a couple hours just to charge up their damn batteries. These are all of the inconveniences. And like I said, even if your battery were to die due to the cold weather, you don't have to precondition your battery in order for it to accept a charge from a jumper cable or from a portable battery charger. Once you put enough amps in the damn thing, that'll be enough to crank the engine, and you remove your jumper cables and let that engine do its thing, and guess what? It will charge the battery. But if you leave it up to these individuals, they're going to tell you something else. And all of that inconvenience that you have to go through, and on top of that, what he's not telling you is how long. Maybe he does it in other videos. I don't know. I don't care to go through his entire channel. But what he's not saying in this particular video is how long does it take to charge these cars? Okay? In many cases, hell, I just went to a dealership a couple of days ago to get my car serviced, and the guy there was saying, 2 hours. 2 hours? Are you serious? I could go to a gas station and be out of there in less than 5 minutes with a full tank of gas. Why would I trade that in to go ahead and deal with all of the inconveniences? So now even when I can get a charge, get my car, my EV, at a charging station, I can't even charge it up all the way. I mean, what level of insanity is this? What world am I living in where this level of stupidity is allowed to run amok the way it does? Let's continue though.
Little extra. So yes, no problem driving an electric car in the wintertime. As I said, I'm not going to take them out today. Plenty of videos on our channel. I'm going to put a bunch of links to some of those videos down below in the description. Go watch them if you haven't seen them yet. I have taken all these cars that I mentioned earlier out in extreme cold. We've been driving through winter storms, all kinds of stuff. So go check those out. These cars do quite well in the wintertime. The only thing you want to do is at home, here,
Once again, they do so well that you have Hertz, the juggernaut when it comes down to rental cars, the Hertz industry, ditching EVs. These cars do so well that you have all these mainstream media news outlets reporting on how these vehicles suck and have gotten stuck during the polar vortex. They do so well that you got reports of how people, consumers who have purchased these EVs, are now trading them in to get back inside of an internal combustion engine vehicle. But once again, these vehicles are doing so well. Keep going.
And there, keep them plugged in.
Oh.
Keep them plugged in.
Oh, let me just bring that back. That's something I forgot to hone in on for a second. Look at that. All right. He has charging ports for 2 cars. My question would be this. What do you think it would take to be able to heat the interior of the cab of the car? Do you think your average household space heater that you plug into a 120 volt outlet would be enough to heat up the interior of a car? It might be. I don't know. I think it could be. I don't know. I guess depending on the heat loss. But it's a small space, so it should be able to heat it up. But it might not be the most effective. So you would require quite a bit of BTUs to heat up the cabin of a car. How about an electric oil-filled radiator? Do you think that would be enough to heat up the interior of a car? I don't know. Maybe so. I can't really state. But even if it is, an electric heater, how much do you think it would cost to just run this from the time you get home off of work all the way up into the next day? Or to run it intermittently into the next day when you wake up and get ready to go back to work again? How much do you think your electric bill will go up by? And these are standard appliances that you would find inside of a house that don't take any extra current or don't require using any dedicated lines in order to supply its power. These electric vehicles, the batteries are high voltage batteries. All right. And even though heating the cab, you might be able to get away with doing that with something that has the same heating capacity of a space heater, a household electric space heater, or an oil-filled electric radiator. You might be able to do that for the cab. But when it comes down to the battery, you got the battery that's at the base of the car, which that's going to be the coldest part because we know that cold sinks. The battery is the heaviest component on the car. This is why EVs are that much heavier than ICE vehicles. So that means you probably got some thick metals inside of there that's going to take quite a bit of heat to penetrate to get these things preconditioned. So what I'm saying is the heating element or whatever is used to precondition that battery probably draws far more current than what you would pull out of a space heater. I don't think the current that a space heater or an oil-filled radiator uses would suffice when it comes down to preconditioning that battery. Now you have this thing charged up all night from the time you get back home and to the time you get ready to go to work the next day, or let's just say it's a weekend or you don't have to do anything for the next couple of days and you don't plan on taking the car out. So now you have this car sitting outside, sucking up your electricity in order to keep its battery charged and also keep its battery preconditioned. How much do you think your electric bill will go up by? You see, what I don't understand about the, you know what, let me put a pause on that. I just want to give y'all something to think about. Let's continue.
And there, keep them plugged in. Keep them plugged in. This way those cars can do what they need to do.
As I told you before, he admits that he keeps these things plugged up all the time. But let's keep going.
Keep their batteries nice and toasty so that you have a better driving experience. Whatever they need to do. If you preheat them, it will take power from the grid rather than from the battery.
Okay.
It works.
For someone who's so concerned about pollution, what is the grid powered by? Is the grid powered by EV batteries? Is it powered by some big battery somewhere that just, gets preconditioned and all this other nonsense? I mean, this is a rhetorical question because we all know the grid is powered by internal combustion, whether it be through nuclear, whether it be through diesel, whether it be through natural gas, whether it be coal-fired. We understand that the grid is powered by internal combustion. But anyhow, let's keep going.
Perfect. Also, I have a video about if you get stuck in the cold. There should be a link popping up here. how long can you be stuck in the cold? Because people always say, oh, you're going to run out of battery. Well, heck, you're going to run out of gas.
Notice how he can't strictly keep it on to the EV. He has to somehow, and say, people say, well, how long can you stay stuck in the cold before you run out of battery? And that's pretty much using your heating system. And he can't give you an answer behind that. He immediately, he directs you to a link. So maybe he answers it in that video, which I doubt I'm going to waste my time checking it out. But notice how, once again, he immediately pivots. Instead of saying, okay, this is how long you can last, instead of giving us a general estimated number, he immediately goes into throwing internal combustion engines under the bus. Which is furthermore why you need to question what you are listening to when it comes down to these people. If they can't give you an unbiased perspective to say, okay, these are the advantages and these are the disadvantages, these are not people that you should be listening to. But let's continue.
There's a video there that will show you how long you could actually be stuck in the cold with an electric vehicle. So it is freaking ass cold. Sorry for this expression, but that's what it is. I've been out here for a while now. Before I started this video, I already been outside. I had to feed our critters up there. And had to put the firewood in the boiler so we keep the house nice and toasty.
Did you catch that? Did you catch that? Did you catch that? See, a lot of time when it comes down to people like this, you got to ask, especially when it comes down to this particular video, what is one of the main premises of this video? What is one of the reasons that he wants to throw ICE engine vehicles under the bus? Because they pollute. That's what he said. Oh, there's so much pollution. Furthermore, he goes as far as to say that they're inefficient due to an internal combustion engine just having so much heat, it wastes so much heat. And then you start to ask, what are your core principles when it comes down to the purpose of this video? What is it that you stand on? So we can conclude that one of those principles is pollution, better for the environment. So this is why he went out and purchased, 3 electric vehicles, according to what he's saying? But then again, after everything that what he says, and this is what starts to let you know where these people really stand, like I tell you, why you really got to question the information that they're giving you. He goes as far as to talk all of this stuff about pollution and wasting energy and so forth and so on, but then to immediately follow it up with talking about, well, I had to go put wood in my boiler. What kind of a boiler uses wood? These are wood-burning boilers. Now listen, I don't have an issue with people having wood-burning boilers. Hell, if I had a house, I would have one myself. But when it comes down to a wood-burning boiler, I mean, this would put in more pollution into the air than the ICE vehicle. You know, if you're talking all this stuff because you're worried about climate and pollution and so forth and so on, then why is it that you have a wood-burning boiler? Hell, that's worse than having a gas boiler or a 2-oil boiler. So why the hell would you have one of these things heating up your home? Since you're so concerned about the environment. Makes no sense. I mean, it would figure, if anything, how come you're not using electricity to heat your home? Oh, that's right, because electricity is that much more expensive, and using wood or getting scrap wood or whatever, it's that much cheaper to be able to heat your home with wood. Right. But he's sitting here trying to tell you he did what was convenient for him to save money when it comes out to the cost of heating his home, despite the fact of whatever pollution it puts out into the environment. But he's trying to tell you to take the most inconvenient route and take the most expensive route by going ahead and buying you one of these EVs. Essentially, well, indirectly trying to tell you to get an EV and get rid of your gas vehicle because your gas vehicle is killing the environment. My question when it comes down to his wood-burning boiler. How old is this boiler? When did you purchase it? Or when you bought the house, was it something that was a part of the house? If it's an older boiler, then it's probably not a very efficient boiler and probably puts out a lot of emissions in the air. I mean, it figures if you really were about saving the environment, if you really were about efficiency and saving as far as pollution is concerned, then why wouldn't you have one of these heat pump systems? Because you favor what the government is saying so much. We know that governments are not in favor of people having gasoline or diesel powered cars. We know they're not in favor of people having gas fired stoves. We know they're not in favor of people having gas or oil fired boilers or furnaces. We know this. This is why they're pushing all this green new climate agenda nonsense, which is complete and utter bullshit. It's complete nonsense. And despite the fact that he is literally favoring their agenda when it comes down to pushing these electric vehicles, you see that, okay, you don't even truly believe in half the shit you're saying. I don't think you do. Because it makes no sense that you can sit up here and tell people right after you've made all these false statements, and in certain cases flat out lying when it comes down to internal combustion engine vehicles, that you would immediately follow it up by saying, yeah, I want to go put some wood in my wood boiler so I can stay warm. No, you're killing the environment. Maybe you don't need to have that wood boiler. Get rid of that and go get you a heat pump system. Go use electric to go heat your home up with, since you believe in this shit so damn much. So once again, I just wanted to show people how you have these EV buffs that are going to come out here, and in certain cases you'll have these climate change activists, these nut jobs that are going to sit up here and demonize you for you deciding to drive whatever car you feel is necessary. You got some people who literally want to demonize those for having an SUV. I mean, this is some of the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen and heard of in my life. Now, once again, you can like what you want. That's perfectly fine. You can favor what you want, but what works for you might not necessarily work for everybody else. But when you sit up here and you attempt to demonize vehicles just because they run on gasoline or diesel, number one, we've already seen that you're not going to make fair comparisons. So when you talk about people's batteries dying out, I'm pretty sure you're not going to mention the fact that these are cars that are old, have all kinds of issues, probably have piss poor batteries, need to have a whole bunch of work done or completely be overhauled. But you'll use that as a comparison to a brand new electric vehicle that you just purchased back in 2021. Like I said, once again, a false equivalence. Comparing apples to oranges. And this is what lets you know that these individuals are completely disingenuous. Because if he was telling you the goddamn truth, he would just tell you what the advantages are about having an EV, and he would tell you what is not an advantage. Or he would just simply tell you what his experiences were of having an EV without even having to mention ICE vehicles. We got a lot of people out here following agendas that are being pushed by governments. And I'm going to probably go into this in depth in another vehicle. I'll talk a little bit more when it comes down to these electric vehicles. But we know that the government is behind this big time. We know that the Biden administration is behind this big time, even though it is tanking the automaking industry to the point where some of them are literally pumping the brakes when it comes down to producing these electric vehicles, because the fact of the matter is people don't want them. They're not a practical idea. I can't even say solution, because they are in no way, shape, or form any type of solution. That's just a fact. And what I'm going to say is, people, this is a thinking man's game. Y'all better be very careful on what you fall for. Because once the fix is in, it's going to be that much harder to undo the damage that has already been done. So with that being stated, be careful on who you're getting information from. Because obviously this guy's pushing an agenda. Obviously this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And I truly don't even believe that he believes in half the shit he's saying right now. Because what he's really pushing is a biased agenda that simply fits his narrative in favoritism of electric vehicles. And with that being stated, that's all I got to say in this production. And I'll catch you on a later date.